councillors, please be seated. Welcome to the meeting of the council this evening. If anybody can't hear me, please indicate by raising both hands, as opposed to one hand if you wish to speak. If that happens more than once, I'll remove my mask. But if you can all hear me okay, I will keep it on. It's a very different place today, and I'm very grateful to the County Council for letting us use their facilities. My chaplain is not here this evening. I will read you some words for you to reflect on, written by an 11-year-old child in response to the question, what is life about? The basic fact is that all sentient beings, particularly human beings, want happiness and do not want pain or suffering. On those grounds, we have every right to be happy and to use different methods or means to overcome suffering and to achieve happier lives. These methods, however, should not infringe on the rights of others, nor should they create more suffering for others. Before we formally commence the evening's business, can I please remind all members of the following. Please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Please don't repeat points which have already been made, especially as we would like a swift meeting tonight, if possible. Please avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the Lord Mayor. Please indicate if you wish to speak by show of one hand. I will then call you as appropriate. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on the YouTube channel, so members of the public will still see and hear what is being said and decided. This brings us to the first item on the agenda, which relates to the minutes of the council held on 18th of October 2021. May I ask if someone is prepared to move the minutes of the meeting held on 18th of October as a correct record of the proceedings?
Move, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Wright. All in favour? Thank you. The next item on the agenda, item number 2, is to advise you of some official communications. I know many were saddened to hear of the passing of Alderman Joe Richardson, a former mayor, councillor, and alderman of the city with many years of devoted public service. I'm sure that you have and may wish to pay your tributes to her. You have memories of her and may wish to pay your tributes to her. Sadly, I also have to tell you of the death of Peter Jones. Peter was a great friend of the city of Exeter. Having worked at the top of his field in marketing, he worked across Exeter with our key partners, residents and staff, and co-founded Exeter Live Better, positioning the city as the brilliant alternative. Peter understood people. He immediately saw that we wanted to put people's well-being and quality of life at the heart of everything. He helped us to join it up. He recognised the outstanding qualities the city honestly had to offer, and would often say that Exeter hides its light under a bushel and then hides the bushel. He died unexpectedly last week. On behalf of the city of Exeter, I would like to offer our condolences to his family, friends and colleagues. He leaves a long and lasting legacy, and we are grateful to have known him. We have received a petition this evening from the Albert Street residents, and we will respond in accordance with the petition scheme. There's a bit about what I've been up to. In November, I had the privilege of participating in the Remembrance Service at Hay Gardens, laying a wreath and reciting the well-known words of the Kahima epitaph epitaph and the exhortation, an honour I never expected to have. I am grateful to the past Lord Mayor, Peter Holland, who attended many remembrance events, and also the annual flag raising ceremony in honour of Polish Squadron 307. I'm also grateful to Councillor Phil Bialik, who laid a wreath at the rugby ground. I attended the biannual Achievement Awards of the Rifles at London's Guildhall, being entertained by the Rifles Bootless, who subsequently visited our historic Guildhall in Exeter. I joined the Weavers, Shearman and Fullers for dinner at Tucker's Hall. Being the only woman present was slightly bizarre, but the quirky beauty of the setting and the luxury food and wine made it a memorable evening. I had a Zoom meeting with the commanding officer of HMS Defender, Vince Owen, and I'm glad to report the ship has since docked at Portsmouth and the sailors are enjoying some leave. Vince explained to me that the internet connection aboard is insufficient for the sailors to use it to text, WhatsApp or Zoom their families. 7 months without internet connection, a hell of a sacrifice in today's world. I was delighted to award Richard Jacobs' Freemanship of the City, and I wait to see if he will take up his rights to herd sheep past Artigiano and Urban Outfitters. I also officiated at the ceremony for Olwyn Foggin to become an honorary alderman. It was a happy day, and I was very sorry to hear that evening Olwyn's husband Gerald fell and is being treated in hospital for broken bones. I have taken part in festivals of light from different faiths, was warmly welcomed to the Moscow Cultural Centre Open Day, and there I reflected on the need for reflection and how difficult that is in the lead up to Christmas in our culture. Christmas with the Lord Mayor was a successful event raising £400 for Inclusive Exeter. I am grateful to members who support these events and look forward to welcoming you all at future coffee mornings. You have, however, missed the chance to catch the Lord Mayor kissing Santa Claus, that being a one-off as my consort Rob played the part this year. Our very own Bishop Roberts has been appointed to the House of Lords. I wrote to congratulate him and perhaps could have mentioned he has 5 months' peace whilst I am required to be politically neutral before I can start to lobby him. Last Friday, Kareem and I attended winter graduation in the Parade Hall of Exeter University, and the partnership between the City Council and the University remains strong. Finally, thank you all for taking a lateral flow test before attending this evening and for remaining masked when you can. This now brings us to the next item on the agenda, as agenda number 3, which is the opportunity for members of the public to submit an advanced public question. I can confirm that we have received no public questions. The next business on the agenda are the minutes of the various committees of the Council that have been held over the last few months since our meeting in October. Can I please remind all members that the relevant person will present the minutes of their meeting en bloc and then ask if members have any questions to raise on matters which can be resolved, or in respect of any recommendations, there will be an opportunity for debate on those matters. If not, I will move on to the next set of minutes. However, when it comes to the minutes of the Executive, the leader will present the minutes one by one, drawing particular attention to each and every recommendation, so that members and the public are aware when decisions by full council need to be taken. An individual vote will then be taken on each recommendation from Executive to Council. So may I first call on Councillor Sutton, as a member of the Planning Committee, to introduce a number of meetings of the Planning Committee, commencing with agenda number 4, with the minutes of that committee held on 11th of October, starting at page 17.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I present the minutes of the Planning Committee held on Monday, 11th of October 2021. Do any members have any questions?
Doesn't seem as the committee just goes. Okay. Good. Lord Mayor, I'd like to introduce the minutes of Ground Committee of 15th November 2021. Do I have any questions? No?
Councillor Diana Moore, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As a member of the Planning Committee, I have asked the Council for guidance on the planning guidance which informs co-living, which is not defined in the National Park Policy Planning Framework or the local planning policy. It has been explained that precedents for set planning policy. This offers very unsatisfactory
Can I remind you that this is a question, and questions are generally restricted as no words.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, the questions.
Oh, my mistake, there's only public questions in the 50 words.
I've almost finished, Lord Mayor. I just need to explain what's happened in order for my question to make sense. I will now finish. It relates to minute 64.
Can I ask which minute your question is on?
64.
On minute 64, okay? Has everybody heard that question?
So I haven't asked my question as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. Could you ask the question, please, Councillor Moore?
So it's been explained that precedents will set the planning policy, which is unsatisfactory guidance for councillors, officers, or in fact developers. So I would ask if this matter of policy can be referred to the planning member working group or other appropriate council committee for consideration. Thank you.
As Councillor Moore knows, planning member working group doesn't make policy, it discusses it, and as part of the local power process, we'll be considering what to do with any policies related to that, purpose of student accommodation and anything else.
Any further questions? No. In that case, can I call?
I beg to move, Lord Mayor.
Is there a seconder?
Don't need a second.
Don't need a seconder. Sorry, not doing very well tonight, am I? I've been concentrating on the amendments to various future items. Anyway, you may move willingly, Councillor Morse. Now may I please call on Councillor Denning as Vice Chair of Licensing Committee to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 26th of October and agenda number 6 starting at page 75. Oh, I'm very sorry, Councillor Denning, it was changed to Councillor Branston. May I call upon you, Councillor Branston?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wish to present the minutes of the Licensing Committee held on the Tuesday, the 28th of October. Do I have any questions? I beg to move, Lord Mayor.
Okay, no questions, those are moved. Now, I please call on Councillor Denning as Chair of Strategic Scrutiny Committee to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 18th of November as agenda item 7 starting on page 77.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wish to move the minutes of the Strategic Scrutiny Committee held on the 18th of November. Any questions?
Councillor Spalding, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm firstly like to thank Councillor Folker for assistance with this. But can you please confirm what work has been done to progress the convenience of
Councillor David Hardy is the chair of that transport working group, and I've asked the meeting be convened in the new year, and as soon as we get the date for that, Councillor Spalding will be informed. Thank you.
If there are any future questions, please could councillors identify which minute the question is on, which will make it easier for us all to understand. I'm sure we'll be happy to do that. I think Barbara is waiting to move.
Would Mayor wish to do the minutes?
The minutes are moved. Can I now call on Councillor Wardle, as Chair of Audit and Governance Committee, to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 10th of November as agenda number 11, starting on page 135. Minutes I've missed out page. Withdraw those last comments, please. Please be patient with me, Councillor Wardle. What I really meant to say was, can I call on Councillor Michael Mitchell of Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 7th of October and agenda item 8 starting on page 89.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. In the absence of the Chair, I wish to present the minutes to Customer Focus Committee held on Tuesday, 7th of October, 2025. Do I have any questions?
Okay, those minutes are moved. Can I now call on you again, Councillor Michael Mitchell, as Deputy Chair of Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee, to introduce the minutes of that committee held on the 2nd of December as agenda item 9, starting at page 99.
Thank you. I wish to present the minutes of the Customer Focus Meeting Committee held on 2nd of December 2021, minute 26 to 32. Do I have any questions?
Councillor Spalding, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. On minutes 31, please may I ask, can the portfolio holder request from Devon County Council what research has been done on workplace parking levy and report this back to the relevant scrutiny committee to inform the City Council statement in this area, especially given that this scheme has proven successful elsewhere? Thank you.
Could I ask Councillor Harvey to answer this question, please?
Councillor Harvey?
Yes, if I heard the question right, the question was, will the City Council ask the county what they've been up to with regard to workplace parking levy? Yes, we will. And we will report back as appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Diana Hall, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In relation to minute number 31, Exeter has this week been announced as the fourth most congested in the city in the country, with an impact of £35 million to the economy. Does the portfolio holder see parking charges as a tool for discouraging journeys and so reducing congestion into Exeter?
Again, there one can refer to the portfolio holder who wishes to respond at this time.
I'm sorry, Councillor Moore, I didn't really catch the question.
Could you repeat the question, please? Okay.
So Exeter this week has been announced as the fourth most congested city in the UK, with an impact of £35 million to the economy. That's a report by INRIX. Does the portfolio holder see car parking charges as a tool for discouraging journeys into the city and so reducing congestion into Exeter?
Councillor Moore, car parking charges are an essential element of our income strategy. They are also a very important element of our congestion strategy. We are working on both of these things regarding car parking strategies, and you will note that there was a considerable discussion at this focus group regarding strategy, where members of your group, members of all groups were very involved. The results of that committee discussion, that scrutiny discussion, are being taken away and worked on by officers in terms of ensuring that we maintain our income levels as appropriate, and that we do as much as is possible to deter people to use their vehicles in order to reduce congestion. You will recall that on many occasions we have identified that the county council are in fact the highway authority, and therefore have a huge part to play in these types of issues, and we are working with them in terms of on-street parking and ensuring that we have the same pricing regimes in order that people aren't attracted to one or the other. So we're working with the county, and we are working on both of those issues.
Thank you. Can I now call on Councillor Denning as a member? Sorry, yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Can I now call on Councillor Denning as a member of the Combined Strategic Scrutiny and Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee meeting to introduce the minutes of that meeting held on 20th of October and agenda item 10 starting on page 121.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to send the minutes of the combined scrutiny board held on the 20th of January, of October, sorry.
Any questions? No questions? Just a few people rubbing their eyes or their heads, but no questions.
I wish to move.
There's a move, Councillor Denning. Kindly remember to move them. Thank you. Can I now call on Councillor Wardle as Chair of Audit and Governance Committee to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 10th of November and agenda number 11 starting on page 135.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I wish to present the minutes of the meeting of the Audit Governance Committee held on the 10th of November 2021. Ask if there are any questions. I so move the minutes.
There's a move. Thank you, Councillor Wardle. I now call on Councillor Hannaford as a member of Audit and Governance Committee to introduce the minutes of that committee held on 1st of December and agenda number 12, starting on page 139. I understand there are also 2 recommendations for council approval.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I noticed to present the minutes of the meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee held on the 1st of December 2021. Do I also ask the questions at this point before the recommendation?
Yes, if there's questions, people raise their hands, please. Right, looks like no questions. John, can you advise that members have the chance to ask questions on minutes and candidate matters which are recommended? As there are no questions, do we move to see if someone is prepared to move the recommendation?
That's correct. It needs to be moved and seconded for each of the 2 recommendations, and that's it.
Okay. Is somebody prepared to move the first recommendation from minute 74? Yes, Councillor Hannaford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm happy to move that recommendation. I'll have a seconder, please.
Okay, Michael Mitchell has seconded. No debate, so we move to the vote. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? I would say that's unanimously carried, and that recommendation is carried forward. Now on to minute 75, the second recommendation. Do you want me to read it to you, or I see that Councillor Hannaford has his hand up, so I'll hand over to him.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation in minute 75. Thank you. I'll have a seconder.
Michael Mitchell has seconded. Any questions? No, so we'll move to the vote. Can all those in favour of the recommendations please show? Looking good. Any against? Any abstentions? Again, that is unanimously carried. Thank you. The next item at agenda number 13 are the minutes of the Exeter Strategic Board on the 11th of November 2021. And I call on Councillor Bialik as chair of the board to introduce the minutes starting on page 145.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move the minutes of the Strategic Board of the 11th of November for removal, Lord Mayor.
Seconder? I don't need a seconder, but if I did, Councillor Wright would be willing to do it. Any questions? No questions?
So move, Lord Mayor.
Those are moved. Right. For your ease, I have a separate sheet with recommendations for the respective executive meetings, and I dare say you do as well. So I will now ask Councillor Bialik to take us through the executive minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move the executive minutes of the 2nd of November 2021. Minute 103, minute 104, minute 105, minute 106. There is recommendation on minute 106, Lord Mayor, that I would like to move.
Seconded by Councillor Wright. Are there any members who wish to, we'll move the vote. Are there any members who wish to vote against this recommendation? Any abstentions? No? Thank you. That clearly shows there's a clear majority in favour of the recommendation, so I can declare that they are carried. Thank you.
You need to ask for those who are in favour of the motion.
Okay, I suppose that would be a good idea. Thank you, John. Can I ask all those in favour? Yeah, I think with the previous questions, that's unanimously carried.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. 107, Exeter Arsenal Full Direction. This is a resolved matter, Lord Mayor.
Okay.
There's no questions. Minute 108, draft statement on gambling policy. There is a recommendation here, Lord Mayor, that I would like to move.
That's minute 107.
107, 108, sorry.
108, I'll explain it. Okay, we'd like to move the recommendation. And do we have a seconder? We have Councillor Wright. I will move it to the vote. All those in favour? Looking pretty unanimous. Any against? Any abstentions? That recommendation is clearly carried.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Minute 109 is resolved, Lord Mayor, and minute 110 is also a resolved matter, Lord Mayor. I beg to move the minutes. I'd like to move the minutes of the executive of the 30th of November 2021. Minute 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, Lord Mayor. There are 7 recommendations which I will not read out. I assume members have read them, and I would like to move those recommendations, Lord Mayor.
Seconded. That is seconded. However, an amendment to this minute has been received.
That's the next minute.
Okay. There has been no amendment to those minutes. Apologies, everybody. So they've been moved and seconded. That's a recommendation, so we need to take a vote. All in favour?
Or if they agree what to say.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, I can give you that opportunity. Any questions? Anyone want to say anything? Councillor Letter. clearly carried.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Minute 116, changes to the role of the Chief Executive and Growth Director of the Strategic Management Board.
Lord Mayor, can
Yes, I'll just let you go, Karine, and I will, once Karine has gone, finally get to my big moment, I declare there's an amendment to this and it has been received. So what are we moving seconding, John?
I was waiting for Chief Exec to leave, Lord Mayor, and I was going to move and reserve the right to speak on recommendations 1 to 6. I move, Lord Mayor.
I second those. Right. Do we... an amendment to this minute has been received. Can I ask Councillor Ledbetter to move the amendment he has proposed in relation to minute 116, please? As you like. And is there a seconder?
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay,
Sorry, not recommendation.
I can see that Councillor Anne Robson is happy to second. Councillor Ledbetter, can you read out the amendment, if that is what you would like to do?
I think as Lee just said, it's written down and we've read it.
Okay.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I think it would be useful to Councillor Ledbetter to read that out because we are people on the, we're watching it might not have being able to see it beforehand.
Thank you, John.
Right, so this is an amendment to minute number 116 of the executive minute, 30th of November, proposed by me, second by Anne Dobson, Yolanda Henderson, Peter Holland and Keith Sparks, and it is in regard of the proposed changes to the role of the Chief Executive and Growth Director and Strategic Management Board, and that the Executive recommends and Council approves that to ensure transparency and accountability, Exeter City Council will take over the work of the Exeter City Futures CIC with respect to the Net Zero Exeter 2030 plan, and that strategic partners are invited to support and work with the Chief Executive Officer and Exeter City Council on the delivery of that plan. Little 2, that recommendations 1 and 2 are therefore deleted. Little 3, that recommendation 3 is amended to read that the arrangements are reviewed by regular reporting to scrutiny, which shall include an update on each of the 12 key targets. Little 4, that recommendation 4 be deferred until the first review of the arrangement. Little 5, that recommendation 5 be deleted. Little 6, that new recommendation 5 is added to reads, the Net Zero 2030 plan be added to the corporate risk register. And little 7, that recommendation 6 stands.
Do you wish to say anything else about the proposal?
My secretary has also got some things to say, but I think she has the right to speech. So I've just got a few words to say. May I start, because it might go my only opportunity for wishing everybody happy Christmas. Okay. Okay. And I know it's a difficult time at the moment, but let's all look forward to the future. And I hope everybody stays well. My opportunity for all officers, chief executive officers, all members, have a super Christmas. I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Just to start.
Well, now it's better.
No, so that's just a few words. And I'm going to be brief. So this is not a criticism of the way things are carried out. This is just a suggestion of how we think things could be done in a better manner. We're all very much signed up to the Net Zero Challenge. It's not just, it's a global thing and a local thing. So we commend the City Council for the work it's doing. It's very important, and it shows the importance that the City Council has put on this work. I propose that the Chief Exec and other senior officers put a lot of time and effort into delivering it. So it's very important. However, what we're saying is that we wish everybody to play their part in that, and we think it would be much better served if this work was carried out within the Council rather than in a standalone, secretive company that we don't have access to. So to say, not a criticism, we applaud what's being done, and we want to take part in that. We just feel it could be better delivered if that work was done in-house. So you've still got the Chief Exec, you've still got the same officers, but it would be open to proper scrutiny from members of the Council and other members who get involved in that work. Because as we said, This is very important. I know what's going to be said to me. I'm going to be told that it can't be done in-house, and we don't understand how it works. So again, I would say that if that is the case, maybe it needs to explain why we can't have that transparency, why scrutiny is not examined, why we're not getting key milestones and key targets, and why it has to be put out to a third-party organisation. That is the reason we moved the amendment. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Ledbetter. Am I right, Councillor Johnson, in thinking you want to reserve your right to speak until later?
Yes, I did right.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak in this debate, please raise your hand. And no, in that case, we will move to you. Have I missed someone? Where was the hand?
Lord Mayor, if there's no further contributions, then it will give you a running order before Andrew comes back in. Second. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. According to my little yellow notes, it will be Councillor Dobson, then you, Councillor Ledbetter, and then Councillor Yellow will speak before we move to the vote. So, Councillor Dobson, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The reason for this amendment is to ensure transparency and that decisions made can be clearly seen by the group of people so far not properly involved and who are going to be the people who are most likely to be involved, and that's the residents of Exeter. If this council is going to succeed in its ambitious plan for net zero by 2030, and I support the remarks made by Councillor Ledbetter as to that, it is those with the democratic mandate who need to be at the forefront. That is why we propose that matters of net zero come back in-house. That work needs to come back into the City Council. It's important because Exeter City Futures CIC is not proving to be transparent and it is not democratically accountable. For instance, in 2019, Exeter City Futures received £200,000 from central government. A further sum of £840,000 was received from central government in 2020. The latter concerns the proposal for an Exeter Development Fund, which sets out in its expressions of interest for that bid of £840,000 that it was to do with housing, planning, and 9 identified major brownfield sites with the delivery of 12,000 homes on those sites. Those are all matters that fall to this council to determine, not to a public interest company. They go on to say that to achieve net zero by 2030 requires billions, not millions of pounds on new public mobility solutions, dense unit housing, new energy networks, city centre remodelling and new transport infrastructure. How the type of housing being built is a planning matter that should be dealt with by this council. They required a budget of £380,000 for the year 2020 to 2021 and £460,000 for the year 2022 to 2023. Neither grant is referred to in the accounts published on the company's house website to the 31st of December 2019 that were filed in December 2020. There are no more recent accounts on the company's house website. Has the 2021 money been spent? What has been achieved with this money? How is next year's money to be spent? What will be achieved with money? There simply is no accountability. Yet one looks at the accounts, those published accounts, and there are losses that are reported. In addition, there was a grant of £250,000 from the Heritage Lottery Fund. For what purpose? Has it been spent? What has been achieved with that money? These are all questions that are asked and will be asked of us as councillors by our local residents. And we should be entitled to be participating with them in all decisions made about net zero. Currently, there is no officer representation from Devon County Council on Exeter City Futures. That has been in position since the 15th of November 2021. with reducing carbon in Devon and Exeter. We have our retrofit programme. Devon have just announced that part of the 3.3 million announcement on the 17th of November includes Great Wall House. It's difficult to pinpoint similar successes for Exeter City Futures. Our other strategic partners, the Royal Devon and Exeter, the University and Exeter College, will continue to want to work with us and many other strategic partners, the Chamber of Commerce, public transport, stagecoach, Great Western Railway, and overall, as I said, the people of Exeter. We therefore propose that to ensure all steps are properly scrutinised by regular reporting to Scrutiny Committee. It is only by such accountability that the elected representatives of this council will know if the plans for net zero are on track or not, and if any significant obstacles have arisen and how they may be resolved. The reason for proposing text of net zero be added to the corporate risk register is that we are told that net zero will cost billions of pounds. This will come under scrutiny of audit and governance, and it is quite appropriate that it should be so, because when delving into one of the development plan document, part of the plan appears to be that this council should be transferring some of its property portfolio, which is stated in that document to have a total worth of some 300 to 400 million pounds, into the fund at market value in exchange for equity. It provides no explanation as to how market value will be achieved or exactly what equity is going to be exchanged, and what assurances this council will have that it may not lose some of its valuable property asset. None of that should happen unless or until the matter has been fully debated by this council with scrutiny, audit governance, then by executive and by this full council. The above documentation is all available online, as are the minutes of the ECF. And currently, the last meeting was held on the 24th of November 2020, over a year ago. There are no published minutes after that date. But minutes do not provide accountability for voters in Exeter. They are nothing more than a record of decisions made. There is no scope for those decisions to be challenged, as things currently stand, and our amendment provides for that by bringing this project in-house. Those responsible for implementing Exeter Net Zero should be asked to be reporting into this council so they can be asked questions. Their achievements and the difficulties can be clearly set out regularly in the public domain, as they should be. I've no doubt that the ruling group will vote against our amendment. It's a shame that they do not support the ambition and aspiration of this group, which seeks to work with all sectors in Exeter to achieve net zero. The question has to be why some seem to fear democratic accountability. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now ask Councillor Ledbetter to speak in summary of that amendment.
I've not really got very much to say because nobody else has spoken. So to sum up, I thank Councillor Johnson for what she said. I hope people took on board the point she made, certainly about representation on this company and the meetings and things not being reported back. And I'll ask members to support our amendment. Thank you.
I'll now ask Councillor Bialik to speak to us before we move to the vote on this amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be very, very brief. The Labour Group will not be supporting these amendments. We believe the paper is quite clear, and I feel sure any of the points will be drawn out during the debate on as a substantive motion if this amendment falls. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, members. I now move to the vote on the amendments put by Councillor Ledbetter to the recommendations. All in favour?
Lord Mayor.
All against?
18, Lord Mayor.
Any abstentions?
One.
Well, I don't get it then.
So,
Oh, I abstain, okay. So, thank you members.
that motion is lost.
Yes, the amendment, the recommendations is lost. This is the opportunity for a further amendment to be put forward. Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to move a further amendment as the one put forward by the Conservative Party has fallen, to read minute 116, that recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 5 be referred to the Strategic Scrutiny Committee. The Strategic Scrutiny Committee be requested to consider the implications of these recommendations and report their findings to the Executive Committee prior to the next Council meeting. I'm opposing that and hopefully I'll be accepted by Councillor Sparling behind me.
Councillor Sparling, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'd like to reserve my right, thank you.
Okay. We're now open to debate. Anybody wish to speak in debate of this second amendment from the proposal? I see Councillor Michael Mitchell who wants to speak now rather than
I'd like to develop the amendment, Lord Mayor. The decisions contained within this recommendation relate to a key priority for this Council, with which we all agree, irrespective of party, that of delivering the net zero agenda. But it also seeks to modify the senior management team's working arrangements within this authority. It is these proposed modifications that we on these benches believe should be subject to all party scrutiny prior to recommendations coming to the next full Council. The minutes of the Executive Committee meeting highlight many of our concerns: risk assessment, governance and conflict of interest, but with no clarity that these have been explored or that mitigation factors are in place. Hence our view that we need a full scrutiny of these key issues and implications so that we can move forward to making a decision having examined the evidence rather than making one based upon a one-party vote at an executive meeting followed by the cut and thrust of a debate at the full Council. If this proposal goes through this evening, unamended, we feel we are doing a disservice to the citizens of Exeter. The report on which this recommendation is based has not come from an externally appointed body. We have not conducted a review of our senior management team and found some have time on their hands. In the next 24 months, this Council needs to deal with the post-pandemic needs of its citizens and the local economy. Central government will be imposing new planning regulations. And only last week, a leak of the government's local government reforms suggests that this and all other two-tier authorities will shortly cease to exist and will be replaced by elected governors. These are just a few of the challenges that this authority face, as well as trying to achieve its net zero targets. This government and its predecessors, through their cuts to local government finances and bidding processes for funding, have forced councils to think of novel approaches regarding the delivery of services and how they work with outside partners. If this amendment is agreed, it allows us a breathing space to ensure that any decision that we will make at the next council meeting is truly fit for purpose. May I request that if this amendment is lost, and that the substantive recommendation is voted upon item by item, but not by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michael Mitchell. Anybody else wishing to speak in this debate for the second amendment? I see no hands, so Councillor Sparling, I will invite you to speak now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I shall keep this very brief. I'm sure you'll be all glad to hear. Basically, I'd just like to say that this decision will have far-reaching implications for generations to come. And so I ask, let's properly put our heads together and scrutinise this momentous decision and with all the facts, making informed decisions so that we can all see a clear pathway taking Exeter towards net zero. I ask that we all please vote for this amendment. Let's give ourselves this small amount of extra time to allow proper investigation and scrutiny of the facts, the implications and the most effective way forward for immediate action. I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spalding. Before inviting Councillor Phil to speak as the forwarder of the original motion, can I check with you, John, whether I offer Michael Mitchell another chance to sum up?
He has got the opportunity to speak again to sum up the debate.
Would you like to do that?
Thank you, Lord. Just 5 brief points. A 12-month unspecified review doesn't provide the foresight this authority needs when making this major change in working practices. The issues surrounding this policy, we believe, have not been sufficiently critically examined. This is not simply a case of offloading £100,000 of staff costs from the council's books onto one of our linked companies. The implications of this policy need to be identified and explored, both in regard to the wider context of employment practices within local authorities and the position of employees working both in effect in the state and the private sectors simultaneously. This amendment seeks to provide the council with the opportunity to use foresight in regard to developing policy, rather than totally keeping its fingers crossed and relying in 12 months' time on hindsight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michael Mitchell. Councillor Phil, can I turn to you now to speak?
You can turn to me, Lord Mayor. I found that very interesting from Councillor Mitchell, responding to a debate that never was, but obviously responding to Councillor Sparling. That was the only person who could have responded. But a very imaginative way of introducing new material in a second contribution. The Labour Group will not be supporting this amendment. As I say, it will become clear in the debate, which we will fully participate in, and I hope you do as well. And I'm assuming, Lord Mayor, that in view of the wide criticism of the Conservative government and its policies not carrying out, that the Conservative group also will be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, we will now go through the same process as we did for the first amendment, which is to vote on it. All in favour of the second amendment proposed by the Progressive Party, please.
5, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. All against?
Lord Mayor.
Obviously, I'm an abstention, so that, or any other abstentions? Oh, yeah, lots.
7, Lord Mayor.
Okay, 7 abstentions, thank you, John. That amendment is lost. So I now invite you to debate on the original recommendations.
Well, I'd like to move it first.
I'll allow that.
I moved it for me, and I asked for the vote.
Yeah, you've got the opportunity now to speak to the audience.
That's what I wanted to do. Thank you. Thank you, John. Members, if we can actually now get back to what the paper is actually about, I think that would be very, very important. A very interesting examination there of Exeter City Futures. This is not about Exeter City Futures and about what they have done in the past. If members wanted to examine that, there is the scrutiny board that they could take that to, discuss it at the scrutiny programme board, and I'm surprised in view of that contribution from Councillor Johnson, that's not been done already. That, in my view, would be the place. It would be very interesting to hear it. So, why should you spend a lot of time looking back? We want to spend more time looking forward. 2 years ago, we declared a climate emergency. The clue is in emergency. And what I'm hearing is, let's delay it a bit further. Let's chat all over it again. Let's go through it. Let's chew the cud already. 2030 is already 8 years away. We've spent 2 years. We've had no funding, unfortunately, Councillor, from central government on this issue. District councils all over the country, Met authorities, county councils have actually spent a lot of time discussing this and doing it with very little funding. Well, districts in particular. I know the county put some money in, and I've seen there's a recent report come out which I believe we've all had, and we're all looking at it as we work through it. So what are we to do? There's been calls, particularly from the progressive group, for us to appoint an officer to deal with these things. And I've made it clear I wanted somebody more than just to go around and count up the used milk cartons in the members' room, and to do a bit more than that. I know the City Council is well on its way with providing electric vehicles, and there are issues, and I feel sure, given the prompt to Councillor Harvey, he'll only be too delighted presently to explain some of the issues we have and the problems we face, but we are going to do it. We are rolling out food waste, which is all part and parcel of the big plan. The City Council is well on the way. But what people, I feel, forget, and what they haven't read the report properly, or they've looked at the report, I'm sorry to take offence of this, but with a jaundiced view, suspicion, what are they up to? Let's find out what they're up to. Because they've got to be up to something, this ruling group that we have to suffer. Well, we've been up to trying to bring forward policies, but you know, there's no way, as important as I think I am and we are, that we can make Liz Roberts, the Vice-Chancellor of the University, Mike Watson, the Managing Director of Stagecoach, Network Rail, Great Western, the Met Office, the RD&E, we have no statutory powers over any of those organisations to tell them to come in, be cross-examined by you guys, for you to tell them how to run their businesses, and for you to be able to say, well, we're now controlling this major thing. That's not how collaboration works, in my view. Leadership is about collaborating and listening. And we've been listening and we are collaborating with those organisations. So we've got to find a way to get them round the table. Using Exeter City Futures and asking the Chief Executive to spend up to 2 days of his time and to allocate another director for 3 days to be working on specific designs within that is the best way forward. We couldn't have a better person doing it. And I defy anybody in this room to say there is somebody better that we can access to do that. What we intend to do is to sit around that table with people. There are other organisations, Lord Mayor, who are already prepared to, for want of a better expression, donate senior directors' time to that process, to that board. I think that's good. We have consulted and worked on a net zero plan. We all had workshops, we were all invited. That plan is there, it's there. That is what we're trying to operate to. That is what we're trying to do. Unless you're telling me all that was a waste of time, and you were always going to put it right in the first place, and we shouldn't have had all that collaboration with all those many tens of groups that we had. We're at a critical stage, Lord Mayor, whereby if we don't start doing something, nothing will happen. And I can tell you that there is no other local authority, district authority like ours, with no money allocated to it, doing anything like it. And as you know, in some of the reports that we've received from the 151 officer over the budget that we made last year during COVID, the emergency budget, we were in the good position of being able to allocate resources going forward on this. And that's what we're doing. For goodness sake, give us a bit of credit for trying. It seems to me that you don't want us to succeed. And when I say us, I mean the whole council, of which you are included. We've all got to try a lot better. Please reread the report, and I'll make this offer. If any group wants a 1 to 6 or a 1 to 5 meeting or a 1 to 11 meeting with the Chief Executive to actually go through some of the details where you can actually talk to him in detail, I feel sure he'll be more than prepared to help you have a better understanding of what we are all trying to achieve. We'll do that. I'll put that call out to you already in the new year. Give it a bit of time over the holiday period. So those recommendations are very important. He's already working on it, as you all well know he is. If anybody has got the links within Exeter, the businesses in Exeter, to get those people round to the table, to get them to give commitments. We even do well, Andrew, with John Hart, believe it or not. He's happy to talk to us, to work with us in the interest of collaboration, because it is a joint thing between the county and the city. So what I'm trying to say to you is that this is a serious way forward. Now there's been talk about billions. Well, we haven't got billions, but we've got to work together. There's been talk about we're hiding something of the development fund. Well, I can tell you, I'm assuming you've all read the forward plan that Mark religiously works on and sends out to us. The forward plan should tell you that at the next executive meeting, which will then come to the council, is a report on the development fund. Exactly. So when people talk about scrutiny, secrecy, and all that, no, it's not. Work has to be done with very, very limited resources within the city. So that development fund work is coming. And I think that in itself needs to be explained in detail. And I must admit, Lord Mayor, it took me quite a while to try and understand the concept and where we sit. So we're not giving up assets to somebody. We just paid 7 or 8 years ago 55 million to get them off of the government, if you remember. We're not giving up assets of our local authority. Don't go running those sorts of scare stories out to people and nonsense like that. We're not going to do that at all. But we have to collaborate on how we get a deal done. So there is a county deal, and this is relevant, Lord Mayor, a county deal that being put forward by the others, and maybe funding are coming down. I'm pleased to say Exeter is a successful city. It is one of the most successful. There's lots of data out there as to where Exeter is in whatever table you can choose. And we are doing well with them. But we're doing it because we're making those moves first. That's what we intend to do. There will not be no dilution to the service offered by the officers of this council. I have absolute confidence that they will carry out as they have done and will continue to do so. And if I did find for one moment that our services and our officer time was being thwarted by any of this, I'd be asking you to stop it right away. Because I wouldn't want the fabric of the council to be destroyed beyond already the 60 pence in the pound cuts that we've had to suffer over the last 10 years. So that's very important. Transparency and scrutiny gets chattered out all the time. Transparency, ooh, you're not transparent. Oh, there's something going on, there must be something going on. No decisions will be taken on anything that the City Council will do other than within the executive or this chamber. I don't know if I've ever said that before to anybody. All decisions impacting on the City Council will be dealt with within, well, not necessarily this chamber, by this council. All right? cannot be more explicitly clear than that. We are not devolving our responsibilities, our influence, our power to somebody else. Okay? Please understand that. The Development Fund paper, please read it when it comes out. And again, I will say, if you want a better presentation of that, then I will ask, if you that's what you want, well, I'm going to ask to do it anyway. I'll be doing it for my members. I think you would want to be part of that, and I'm happy for that. So there is a better understanding. Because to me, it's about what we're seeking to achieve here in Exeter. We are going to retrofit our homes to SAP-B standard at the very least. We are going to build those 500 council homes coming up. We had asked for a feasibility study into a residential property company. I am going to bring all these things. My team is going to bring all these things to you. We are going to bring you a local plan where there will be all the considerations about climate being put in. You know we're going to do it. You know we're going to do it. And I need the proper people at the top dealing with these things. And so if this is a mechanism of getting those people round the table so we can influence Lord Mayor and we can impact upon their agenda to make sure that they are moving in the same direction of us, this is the best way to go. And I can assure you now that we will be bringing back regular reports on what the Chief Executive, in line with this report, is up to. It will be available to the Scrutiny Committee. It will be available to the Executive Committee. You will be able to see it all. Stop trying to chase these ghosts that don't exist. Get behind us. You continually tell me you want to work with us. Please try and do that. And let's get on with getting this agenda going on the Climate 2030. And I would encourage you all to try and support and also work with us on this project. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Diallo. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
Sorry, reserve.
You'll reserve your right. Okay. We will now open this original proposal to debate. Anybody wishes to speak, please indicate by show of hand. That will be Councillor Morse, followed by Councillor Harvey, and then Councillor Wood, and Councillor Ledbetter. Okay, could we start with you, please, Councillor Morse? More. Diana Moore.
Thank you very much. At the executive meeting, I asked 7 questions, and these are set out on page 155. And all of these relate to the proposed secondments, risk, funding, oversight of the secondments, and also the financial and governance arrangements of Exeter City Futures, which Councillor Jobson has elaborated on. None of these concerns were adequately addressed, if at all, by the executive. And as I said at the executive meeting, and I will reiterate again, I support recommendation 4, as do all members of the Progressive Group. And I would ask that the Progressive Group support for recommendation 4 be minuted. We absolutely do need a carbon budget for the city, so that everyone can understand the level of emissions that the city is creating and understand where we need to focus our biggest and most urgent efforts. The baseline should enable proper and regular examination of the Net Zero 2030 plan adopted by the Council. And that step must happen first. We must be sure that the Net Zero 2030 plan will deliver that carbon reductions that are required and set out in the carbon budget. And I would be grateful if Lee can confirm that piece of work will be done once the carbon budget is created, that it be compared against the Net Zero plan to ensure that it will achieve what is required in terms of carbon reductions. So it is important in such critical times that we need to slow down and make sure we are focusing on the right thing rather than rushing into action with our fingers crossed that it's the right thing to do. And those suggested priorities are set out in 3.16 in that report. So I've listened very carefully to the debate so far this evening, and I do remain concerned about the lack of transparency and scrutiny of this approach, especially where investment is required. It is a shame that issues around the City Development Fund have only emerged now as a result of these conversations, although they've been in the public domain much earlier. And so there is a lack of clarity about that fund that will be coming forward after this decision is made. So it's not clear if the focus of the secondments will be on the development of this investment vehicle for the livable Exeter building project. We absolutely need immediate reductions in carbon emissions that the science demands. As Exeter grows, it is fundamental that there is clarity and transparency over the roles and relationships between citizens, the council, developers and potential investors. Because as well as setting in train number of projects, citizens need to be taken with us, understand what is happening and why. And this council and the county council have a particular job of work in terms of setting the policy framework. And it is everybody here actually is probably really fed up with the ping pong that happens, particularly around transport. We can't do anything. The county council's job. Oh, the county council's not doing enough. And so it goes round and round and nothing happens. We have to enable that right policy environment. Other councils, so I do agree with the fundamental proposition that's set out in the report that the council should be working with other institutions to bring greater resources to the shared goals to achieve net zero that they wouldn't be able to do by themselves. But other councils are using their leadership role, their powers and status as the council to work with partner organisations and communities to ensure transparent and inclusive action on the climate emergency. Not least so that residents can see, understand and be active participants in the urgent changes that we need to see. And so many councils have set up a working committee to progress this work and oversee this work with rigour and transparency. So it's absolutely not about the individuals concerned. I don't doubt anybody's commitment to progressing this agenda. It just doesn't make sense to transfer these arrangements. So I've started with 7 questions and I've listened very carefully. I do remain concerned about this proposal to make these secondments. I don't believe it's going to be an impactful arrangement that really will address the most pressing issue that's facing our communities this century. So I'd be grateful if the leader would answer this one question. Why are we outsourcing our leadership, our responsibilities, our relationships and powers that we do have as a council to a private company?
Thank you, Councillor Diane Moore. Are we answering that question to the summary? You'll have to answer that?
No.
You'll leave it to the end for summarising. So, I would ask people to be succinct as possible whilst making any points they feel they need to. I will now move on to Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. With regard to working together with other organisations and authorities, I sit on the Exeter Airport Consultative Committee as your representative, along with a number of parish councils, along with the National Trust and other organisations. Currently, we are engaged in what's called, with the acronym, ACP, which is the Exeter Airport Airspace Change. In a nutshell, this describes the amount of airspace that Exeter Airport is allowed to control. The glide path for an aeroplane landing at Exeter is 8 miles long, and in the east it starts somewhere just east of Ottery, and in the west it starts, you look it at yourselves. I need information, data, support with regard to air pollution, consistency. You can imagine, it's all about if a large airliner is on this glide path, engine shut off, gliding into Exeter, and a microlight or small plane buzzes in front of the plane, then they have to turn the engines on and make a loop and go round again. That's what happens, right? Many people ask me about the noise at 9:15 at night. Well, that's the mail plane going up to, I think it's Glasgow. But the interesting point here is that we do not have the resources to monitor, to look after, and to engage within what is actually happening there. And this proposal is the only way in which we, as a local authority, can arm ourselves with the data that we require. The second thing I'd like to say is that we are a successful authority. We have been successful in bidding to the European Regional Development Fund for funding to support our solar field on the other side of the river, just by the, careful here, the energy from waste plant. That particular installation is going to power, and part of our bid was that it would in fact power our RCVs, refuse collection vehicles, full-size refuse collection vehicles. I would be very pleased to be able to announce that 3 weeks ago, possibly 2 weeks ago, our director signed off an order for our first 3 electric refuse collection vehicles. These will be the first in the southwest, and it demonstrates how Exeter is leading in matters of carbon reduction. That is what we are doing. At the focus scrutiny meeting, there was some discussion about whether electric-powered vehicles were in fact valid, because the electricity has to be created somewhere, and there are other discussions about the technology. But these vehicles are being powered by the sun. That's how they're being powered. That's how the electricity is being created. There is no doubt whatsoever that Exeter is leading, that Exeter needs to continue putting in place the organisations that will allow us to maintain our drive towards 2030 and carbon reductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll now call on Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I must say that I'm quite surprised. I never thought I would hear the Green Party recommending we slow down plans to address climate emergency. Could have surprised me. I think there are 2 elements here that members opposite may be blurring.
Point of order. Councillor Moore, what is your point of order?
I didn't say that. I can say exactly what I did say. I really do object to being misquoted. And I can't remember the standing order, but I do have a right to say what I said.
Point of personal clarification.
Point of personal clarification, thank you very much.
So we allow that for all?
Yes, I think Councillor Moore wants to clarify that point.
Point of clarification.
I said, in such critical times, we need to slow down and make sure we're embarking on the right thing rather than rushing into action with our fingers crossed it's the right thing to do. And I was talking about making sure, this was in response to the budget, carbon budget, that the net zero plan actually achieves the carbon reductions. I said in that paragraph quite specifically that they achieve the carbon reductions that are required by the carbon budget, and that exercise needs to be undertaken to look at the items that have been suggested in 3.16 of the report to make sure that that happens rather than rushing ahead doing the wrong thing.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I heard a lot of justification and lots of parameters to the statement of we should slow down. I I accept that it's more complicated, bottom line, headline statement, slow down. That's all I say. So, I think there are two elements here that I think members opposite may be blaring. The first is what we can do directly as a council to reduce our carbon footprint. That's where we are in control. That's where these members within this chamber make decisions, analyse them through scrutiny, with the support of the officers. We make a difference in how we as a council operate. If you want to see how that pans out, look at the corporate plan, look at the manifesto that Labour was elected on. Look at what's been done and what is being done. Please celebrate our council's achievements and support its ongoing actions. If you want to see what those are, have a look at the news section on our website. I mean the council's website. You can look at Labour's as well if you like. It's all about the difference this council is making to the services it provides and how it does it. We have been on this journey for more than a decade. We're not new to this party, this game. We have been working on it for decades. And we're still going, and we're going strong. And as Councillor Harvey has mentioned, some really, really significant changes to the way we operate. The refuse collection trucks, anybody that's got them going down their road first thing in the morning, you know how slowly it moves, chugging along, engine constantly running, on diesel, kicking out diesel fumes, using up carbon. If we move to electric, which we will, all of that power use comes from the sun. We will be charging our electric trucks from our solar farm. Now, if that's not significant change, what is? But that's all about what we do. And important as councillors are, I think sometimes it's easy to forget that the city is much, much larger than the council. We've heard billions of pounds mentioned with regard to what it will take to make this happen. We're talking about the survival of the human race. My first thought is let's get on with it. My second thought is let's do the best that we can. We are as a council. What can we do as a city? Well, I don't think the council can tell the city what to do. And I think we're leading ourselves astray if we think we have that much push. What we can do is mediate. What we can do is bring people together. And for that, we need to be seen as a trusted friend, as somebody that can facilitate effectively. And that is what this proposal is about. It's about putting somebody into the seat that can actually steer people, bring people together, help people to work together. Like I said, what we've done as a council, well, the RD&E are doing what they can do. The university are doing what they can do. But what we're talking about here is all of us coming together and not forgetting the residents. We cannot make carbon zero by 2030 without the residents coming along with us. And the council plays a role, but we are not in control of this agenda. We will deliver what we can as a council. And what we can give to make this happen is the skills and the trusted leadership to bring together as many partners as we can to make this happen. If you look at the 10 priorities that were listed in the paper that went to the executive, none of those are within our control as a council. This is got to be done in a trusted environment where people aren't told what to do, where they're asked to do what they can do, where they are able to value and identify the difference that they can make and the danger that we as a species face and make the difference. Let's not delay, let's not hold back, let's not talk it over again. As Councillor Bialik has said, we declared an emergency. Clues in the name, emergency. Let's get on with it. Let's get the right man in the right place to bring people together, and in bringing people together, bring the trust into this environment so that we can try and turn this around by 2030. We are not going to do it on our own. We are the council, we aren't the city. And we need the city to come along with it freely. And that takes trust and it takes motivation. And that's the sort of person we are trying to put into the position where he can bring those skills to bear in the most effective way. So I will definitely be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Can I call upon Councillor Ledbetter now, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My comments on this. I think one thing I would say is that the other parties are entitled to an opinion, so we're allowed to have an opinion. At no time did the Conservative group say that it didn't want crew to work on this project. And Councillor Balek, as often happens, you decided to hear what you wanted to hear, not what we actually said. And at no time, in fact I said we want to work with you, we applaud what you're doing. All we asked was that this work was done in-house. Now you've given us some reasons why it can't be done in-house. You don't believe this work, this collaboration can be done as a committee of the City Council. It needs to be done separately. Well, that's fair enough. That's all we were suggesting. Not that you stop the work, you go slower, or anything else. We applaud what is going on, we just want to be involved. And as to scrutiny, yes, the original plan was to call this into scrutiny, but because it is a recommendation, tonight is the scrutiny meeting, in effect. So, in an ideal world, we would have called it to be scrutinised, a scrutiny meeting. Say, because of the recommendation, it comes tonight, so we are in fact scrutinising it. And you're quite right, I think going forward, I would hope that, we can't say what scrutiny does, but I would hope that scrutiny does call it in and get its regular updates. So, we've had a good debate. I thank you for the reassurances you've given us. That's really reassuring. We've said we all want to work together. I appreciate that you can't tell these other organisations what they can do, but certainly from a leadership point of view, the city is very well placed to get everybody to work together and to collaborate on a way forward. So, as I say, we agree with a lot of what's going on. Our only suggestion was whether it should be done in-house rather than a standalone committee. As I say, you've given reasons why that possibly can't happen. I would like to take your offer of a meeting with the Chief Exec, not on a huge group, just on a group basis, and maybe at the next full council meeting we can confirm that that's taking place. So I can put that on record that we'd like to take you up on that. And as you say, let us all move forward and work together to realise this ambition and make Exeter a zero city.
Thank you, Councillor Ledbetter. Councillor Kevin Mitchell, and Gary would like to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points that have been stated, and Andrew has already alluded to them. It's just for clarity, and I think this is an important point to make. I can remember seconding a motion for a climate emergency to be declared by this council. That at the time was voted down and delayed. And I was told at the time by the Labour group it was delayed because they wanted to change it with more detail in, and basically wanted to, in effect, scrutinise the proposal. All we were asking for tonight was for the same opportunity to do that. This is a majorly important issue, and we just want it to be done correctly and right. So just wanted to make that clear from our group's perspective. I too would like to accept your offer of a meeting with the Chief Exec and with our group. I think that would be very helpful and very beneficial. And I would hope that we can all try and move forward together, cross-party, on this matter, because that's what our proposal was hoping to do. Just have an opportunity to look at it in greater detail, then move forward together. And that's what we were attempting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kevin Mitchell. Councillor Michael Mitchell, and that will move to Councillor Laura Wright.
Just one small point of Councillor Lee, Councillor couldn't reply. In my original opening statement, I did say that if our amendment was lost, which it has been, would you be willing to accept a vote item by item on the resolution, non-roll call? By show of hands, not a roll call, just item by item. Thank you.
Okay. That's great. Everyone happy to go on to Councillor Wright to take her chance to speak? Yep, great. Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't think I need to be anything other than brief, to be honest, because we've heard from lots of people in that debate, and I appreciate what Councillor Lepper has said, and so Councillor Mitchell, about working together now and being together on this agenda to get our net zero target through. So in the light of that, I would just like to say I support this recommendation. We do need to get our work done across the city. As an example of something brilliant that we're doing in the council, we are retrofitting all of our council stock. That's 4,000 homes. We've already retrofitted almost 200 and brought them up to A or B standards, where they were previously D or E. I know you're probably thinking she's always going on about that, but there's a reason for it. The work that we are doing, we would dearly love to be able to roll out across the city and in fact county-wide. We don't have the capacity in HRA to be able to talk to the right people and start these wheels turning, to be able to benefit the rest of the city and all of the residents in the city, to be able to take part in this, buy into this, get this, their houses retrofitted. We can't do that with the capacity that we have. So we do need to work with other people across the city and in the county, and Exeter City Futures has already got the building blocks of that in place. So we do need to go quickly but cautiously, and we're not keeping our fingers crossed. We are believing that this is going to work. But I think what's come up tonight are many assurances from the leader about transparency, about scrutiny. He's given you the assurance again, which he gave at Executive, that this work will be coming back to scrutiny and back to Executive and back to Council. There's nothing that's going to be done in Exeter City Futures that is going to make decisions that have to be made and will be made here in Council. So I think that those assurances have been given. I think that that was what we were bringing forward. Not to say this work shouldn't be happening and that you're not behind the net zero going forward. I think the questions were about transparency and scrutiny, so I hope that you now feel better about that because you have those assurances through the debate and from the leader. So at that point, do I move to vote?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I believe Councillor Elliott now has the opportunity to sum up, and then we will move to the vote.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And first of all, I appreciate what Andrew has said there, and that he would like some more information, and we can have the opportunity of doing that, and I will make sure that all groups are invited. My own group, and I will take that to me also at another, because you don't want the two meetings on the same, because it will just blow your mind. Also on the development fund as well. I'm happy to arrange that. Why are we outsourcing? We're not. Stop saying that. We're not doing it at all. Read the report, and the report is quite clear. It tells you exactly what we're doing at the start of the report. Where it says, number 1, page 9 of item 6 of the executive report, where it went to, that we are deploying senior capacity of leadership to the net zero plan. I generally thought people would welcome that. I really did. Thought that this isn't nothing against any other officer, by the way. I don't get in trouble with anybody. This is not a middle management officer. This is the Chief Executive and a Senior Director dealing with this, equivalent to 5 directors' working days a week, 2 from Cream and 3 from Joe Young. I want to see that. I want the Council to see it. I want you to be able to see what they are doing with their work in transparency and to come through. Councillor Wood mentioned the 10 proposals, and I'm glad he mentioned it, because we are not, if you just look through those proposals, and tell me what we can control by moving a motion in this building. Let's move a motion now to say we're going to have electric buses. Well, we can move that. We can move that. Let's move a motion now that we're going to have all public sector vehicles to be electric. Well, we can move that motion. We can move it. And we can all clap our hands and pat ourselves on the back, leave our chamber and go, hang on a minute, who's listening to us? Nobody's listening to us. We need to get them together round the table. And we're slowly but surely doing that. And the sorts of things on collaboration, and Councillor Wright mentioned about the retrofit. A big programme, our intention to retrofit. And as you know, we've already said we will look into a feasibility study about if we can get our own retrofit company to do it, to try to save money. A bit like our development company, because we don't want that 20% of developers' money going out of the city if we can at all possibly help it. And we've got control over it. So there's an example that Live West reported to us in a public forum at the left board that they are throughout the southwest 800 million that they are allocating to retrofit. Isn't it a good idea to talk to them, to get them to come round the table, to talk about their plans? Is there any learning we can share? Is there any scale and massing that we can do? I've already had a conversation with the Chief Executive and the leader of Mid-Devon. Is there any scale and massing that we can do about all of that? To me, it makes eminent sense. And so there's been, again, about lack of scrutiny. I don't know how much, I want to say it just for the last time. No decision is going to be made other than by the council in the appropriate forum. There will be opportunities to scrutiny. This is going to go on for 8 years, and it's going to go on for a lot more. There is going to be lots of reports, lots of opportunities for you all to actually, I won't say pore over, but for you all to examine and scrutiny. There's going to be report after report coming out. There's going to be lots of opportunities. Please, please, see it for what it is, and not some sort of suspicious thing that we're trying to do. We want Exeter to be net zero as soon as practicable. 2030 is our target date. The City Council is on course. We want other members within to be on course. Risk registers, all that, I want to see all that. I want to take all that thinking away and to deal with all of that. I really want to do it. So take us up on that opportunity. You've indicated you will do. Let's have a good discussion. And you know what, if that works, I'll carry on with it. But if it doesn't, you can understand me saying I'm wasting the Chief Executive Officer's time. I don't want to. Please, please give a unanimous support to what we're trying to do. And remember, it's for 12 months. Remember the test that we've got. I think it's important. I ask the Council to unanimously support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Bialik. This is an important matter. I will now move to the vote, but in line with the request, we will do it one by one of the 6 recommendations. So the first thing we're going to vote on is minute 116, the first recommendation. Just to remind you, that is to approve the secondment of the Chief Executive and Growth Director for 2 days per week to head up the work of Exeter City Futures CIC in support of the Net Zero Exeter 2030 plan commencing on 2nd of January 2022. Can I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Can I have a show of hands for all those against? And any abstentions? Thank you, John. The first recommendation is carried. The second recommendation, which we will shortly vote on, to approve the secondment of the Director of Transformation for up to 3 days per week to Exeter City Future CIC to design and lead the programme of change in support of the Net Zero Exeter 2030 goal commencing on 2nd of January 2022. All those in favour, please show your hands. Thank you, John. Any against, please show your hands. And any abstentions, please show your hands. Okay, the second recommendation is carried. Recommendation 3 is to agree to the review of the secondment arrangements in 12 months. All those in favour, please show your hands. Thank you. Any against, please show your hands. Any abstentions, please show your hands. Okay. Recommendation 3 is carried. Going on to recommendation 4, to approve the commission of additional work to establish a carbon budget for the City of Exeter to show the baseline position for the city, the various city sectors who contribute to carbon emissions, the targets to achieve net zero and the carbon emission implications in pursuing the proposals as set out in the net zero plan. All in favour, please raise your hands. Okay, any against, please raise your hands. And any abstentions? 1. That is clearly carried. Recommendation 4. Recommendation 5 is to note the changes to the Strategic Management Board reporting rights. All in favour, please raise your hand. Or against, please raise your hand. Any abstentions, please raise your hand. Thank you, John. Recommendation 5, as you've said, is carried. That brings us to the last recommendation of this part. The request that Strata Service Solutions Limited consider amending its constitution to allow for the officer representation on its joint executive committee to be the chief executive or his nominee of the 3 constituent authorities rather than the chief executive. All in favour, please raise your hands. That may be psychic, but I'm guessing 18. Any against? 0. Okay. Any abstentions? Okay, so that is the 6th recommendation. All the recommendations are carried. I'm now going to have a short comfort break of 5 minutes, after which I would like Councillor Duffy to continue presenting the minutes to the executive.
Please be outside, board of the director.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Minute 117, Exeter Park Report Direction, Houses in Multiple Occupancy, response to a recent petition. Here, Lord Mayor, there are 2 recommendations which I would like to move. say this is an example of how a petition has come forward, it's been looked at, it's been considered, and the views of the local people in that area have been taken into account, Lord Mayor, and I think it is, I'm going to say it, of course I am, but I think it is an example of how we do things in the council. I move, Lord Mayor.
Forgive me for interrupting you, Leader. Should not we allow Councillor Wright to speak? We don't want to speak. I'm going to need to speak up because I just support what the Leader has just said. Excellent. We're all in harmony there. Okay, I think that means we can move to the vote. All in favour, please show. That's unanimously passed. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Minute 118, and perhaps I will take the advice that I've already had in the chamber tonight and slow down a little bit. Overview of the General Fund Revenue Budget 21-22, Quarter 2. Lord Mayor, there are 4 recommendations here, and I would like to formally move them at this stage.
I will second them. As there are recommendations, would you like to speak on them, Councillor Wright, either now or later? I don't think so. No. Would you like to say anything about them, Councillor Alec?
If there's no other contributions, Lord Mayor, I'd like to move to the vote.
Straight to the vote then. All in favour? Looks unanimous. Any against? Any abstentions? 2. Okay, so those recommendations are carried. Minute 119, Councillor Alec.
General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement, Quarter 2. Lord Mayor, there are 2 recommendations which I would like to formally move at this stage. Thank you.
I'll second that one. Okay, anybody want to speak? Councillor Wright or Councillor Alec, you happy to move straight to the vote?
Yes.
Okay, all in favour? Any against? And any abstentions being recycled, I'm going to guess 2. Oh no, 3. I'm losing my abilities. Mine as well. 4. Okay.
Minute 120, Lord Mayor, HRA Budget Monitoring Report, Quarter 2. 2 recommendations which I would like to formally move, Lord Mayor.
How about the second one? Are we happy to go straight to the vote? All in favour? Okay, that's unanimously carried.
Minute 121, Treasury Management Half-Year Update. One recommendation here which I formally move, Lord Mayor.
I second that one. Happy to go straight to the vote, everybody? All in favour? Unanimously carried, great.
Minute 122, updates on procurement and contract procedures, Lord Mayor, and here there are 3 recommendations, and I would like to formally move at this stage. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Everybody happy to go straight to the vote? Okay, all in favour? Unanimously carried. I'm a bit confused, John, because, this is the end of the executive minutes. I thought it said the end of the meeting, and I thought that can't be right. This is the end of the executive minutes,
And I'd like to move those minutes, Lord Mayor.
which are moved, seconded. Do we need to vote on them? No, they're resolved or something like that. So now we go back to the main bit of the council meeting after the executive minutes. And there's a notice of motion. Councillor Kevin Mitchell, please, if you would like to speak to that motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to formally propose my motion. Could I keep to denial of rights and equal treatment, and further recognises that discrimination does still exist, does still occur today. This council recognises and opposes the ongoing harm the practice of so-called conversion therapy brings to LGBT plus people. This council calls on the government to follow through on the promises made not just in this year's Queen's speech, but for the past 3 years to outlaw the practice of so-called conversion therapy. This council notes the ongoing government consultation on this matter and calls on the government to introduce an effective ban on conversion therapy within England, supported by a programme of work to help tackle these practices in all their forms. Furthermore, this council will highlight and promote the continued support, counselling and advocacy our local groups provide to members of the LGBT plus community. This council recognises the excellent work done by local people and organisations to support the LGBT plus community here in Exeter and extends its thanks and support to them. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I understand Councillor Hammond wishes to speak. Yes, thank you, Councillor Jemima Moore, for seconding, and now I'd like Councillor Hammond to speak.
Look, Lord Mayor, I think I need to present it now.
Oh, you do? Thank you.
We do.
It's getting late.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be as brief as I possibly can, because I believe that, well, I hope that we'll have cross-party support on this matter. I was lucky to have a very supportive family when I told them about my sexuality, and still do today. But many are not so lucky. According to the National LGBT Survey, 1 in 20 members of the LGBT community stated they had been pressurised to seek conversion therapy. This figure was higher for the 18 to 24-year-olds, BAME and disabled members of the LGBT community, 9%, 9% and 8% respectively. And sadly, 1 in 5 trans people, that's 20%, have been pressurised. Being gay, being lesbian, bisexual or trans is not an illness. It does not need a cure. Therefore, this harmful practice needs to be outlawed, and this needs to occur now. Exeter is a tolerant city. We welcome diversity, and we embrace individuality. Today, by supporting this motion, we can show our continuing support for the LGBT community, and I hope everyone will support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Before moving to Councillor Hannaford, can I ask Councillor Jemima Moore if she would like to speak now or reserve the right to speak later? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move straight to Councillor Hannaford, please.
I'll go from my view then. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I guess I feel a responsibility to support and speak to this motion, and I obviously welcome it. I think it's important tonight to remember that across Exeter there will be LGBT plus people who are feeling lonely, feeling pressurised, feeling isolated. So this is our chance, I think, this evening to reach out to them and show them some of our solidarity, because many of the issues around this conversion therapy really are about internalised phobia, self-respect, and many other related issues. So I think it's right to use every opportunity to raise this issue and continue to lobby and fight for this much needed change. If anybody is in any doubt what the conversion therapy means, at least at the moment, there's a very good film called The Lost Boy, which really outlines what can happen in terms of the suicide, self-harm, and terrible unhappiness that can be inflicted from this, and also the hypocrisy of some of those who actually practice it, because many, certainly in America, it was found that many of the people that were running some of these institutions were actually gay themselves, couldn't cope with it, and this was their way of coping with it, was trying to stop other people being who they are, which is just appalling. I think in terms of in my role in this place as the chair of children's scrutiny, we have very much had the impression, particularly through the lockdowns, that many LGBT plus people have felt very isolated at home, and it's a very different thing to be at home forcibly. If you've got a loving, supportive family, but if you haven't, then this would be an added complication. And I think that's reflected as well in some of the homelessness that's occurred, because people have had to leave because they've been not treated very well. I think looking at the treatment of it itself, historically and currently, I think it's important that you remember that it has been akin to torture. There's been extreme physical harm, prolonged cruelty, historically electric shock treatment, poisoning, forced feeding, starvation, and deprivation of sleep and liberty. So it is not, a thing that we should forget. And of course, what are they seeking to cure? We know that most people's gender identity is often in place very early, and we all know that every human being is essentially unique. So it's completely ridiculous to expect there's some binary choice, in some primitive way, that's the only way that people can live their lives. And I think we need to foster and develop a culture and a society that supports and respects diversity and difference, and including allowing people to have the support and to come to terms with their sexual identity. I think what is profoundly shocking as the practice itself is the fact that we're still having to talk about this and challenge this in 2021. And I think the context of that is this slowness of change that we have in this country. I mean, as we know, consensual homosexual acts were not decriminalised until 1967 for men over 21. And just to show the absurdity of the discrimination, as we know, lesbianism, and it's probably the first time that's been used in this chamber, Lord Mayor, so I think that may be a first as well, has never been in effect, because legend has it that Queen Victoria struck it out of the legislation because she didn't think that such a thing existed. And as we know, the UK was one of the slowest countries in Europe to liberalise our laws on homosexuality. And in some cases, such as France, hundreds of years adrift. I do think sometimes when I'm in the Guildhall, Lord Mayor, and we look at all the Napoleonic memorabilia, I feel that I would have probably had divided loyalties, because under the Code Napoleon, I would have been decriminalised in France, but I would have been persecuted in my own country. And I think we also need to acknowledge again, and Councillor Mitchell has referenced this in terms of the BAME community, the toxic legacy that we've left through empire across the world, where often countries that we did colonise often had very tolerant systems in regard to different sexual identities, like India and South America and Africa, and we have imposed now this toxic legacy, and you see some of the worst cruelty in those countries, in places like Uganda, which is still ongoing. So I think and that then reflects itself in Exeter with our BAME community if we're not very careful. In my time, having been born in 1972, it was only in the 1990s that we achieved the equal age of consent. We had no equal marriage, we had clause 28, and we had the scandal of people that had served this country in our armed forces being forced out and losing their pensions simply because they were LGBT+. And in fact, it was only this year at the Remembrance Day service in London that our LGBT+ service people were allowed to be fully present at that service. I mean, it is something that we have to keep coming up against. Councillor Mitchell has mentioned the trans community, and I think again recently as we've become more educated and involved about that, it seems as if we're going backwards sometimes. All the stuff on social media, all the claims and counter claims, and people hijacking the agenda of what is, which is basically treating people with respect and dignity. And I have to say, as you know, Lord Mayor, in terms of this council, only a few years ago, despite the council having mayors and Lord Mayors for centuries, I was the first openly LGBT+ mayor, Lord Mayor, in the history of our city. And if I can say, I may have been the first, but I certainly won't be the last. So in conclusion, Lord Mayor, I think there is hope, and that is young people. Every survey that we have, every evidence we have is that young people simply won't accept this sort of discrimination anymore. They find they're shocked to know that equal marriage and people allowed to be in the armed forces or whatever only happened so comparatively recently. So I think we need to hope that the future is going to be progressive. But I would hope that everybody here today could please support this motion and show your solidarity with LGBT plus children and young people in our city so they can live free from fear and discrimination. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Anybody else would like to speak? Councillor Fisday and then Councillor Morse, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't be long. I'm just going to say that the current UK government is proposing to introduce this legislative ban on the practice of the so-called conversion therapy. As part of developing the legislation for banning conversion therapy, the government had launched a consultation that started on the October 29th of this year, 21, and was due to close on the 10th of December, i.e. last week or a few days ago. However, the consultation period had been extended until the conversion therapy had been extended until Friday, February the 4th, 22, after which a draft bill for spring 22 will be prepared to go forward. So, first of all, I would like, because of this extension period, it's great that we tell people about it, and hopefully more and more people can go and have their say with the consultation. I welcome the intention of the UK government to host the Safe to Be Me, a global equality conference due to take place in June 2022, to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the first official London Pride marches. So this, after this consultation, there will be a short paper proposed, and we're hoping that the two things will come together, i.e. the paper on banning the conversion therapy. At the same time, after that, very shortly, we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Pride marches. Thank you. And that's why I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisday. Councillor Morse, please.
I am the mother of two mostly perfect teenagers. They couldn't be more perfect, and their friends couldn't be more perfect if they tried. And as a very right-on member of the Labour Party, I have learned an enormous amount from my teenage children and their friends of late. The thing that would break my heart most in the world is if anybody thought that those perfect people had to change in any way, that they weren't good and wonderful just the way they are, teaching an old woman new tricks. So I can't understand how anybody wouldn't vote for this, and I don't think there should be any exceptions, although I know there are plans to move religious beliefs to be one of them. So I think I stand with the rest of my group in saying that we will be supporting this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Anybody else like to speak? In that case, Councillor Diana Moore.
Thank you. I agree with all previous speakers, and I just want to thank Councillor Hussain for raising the issue around the consultation, and I would welcome the fact that Councillor Mitchell's brought this at this particular time, so hopefully this can be formally made as a submission to that consultation. I just wanted to clarify that, and it would be really good if we could put the government's reply onto the council website so everybody can see what the government said, and if we can do that promotion. So thank you for bringing this and for people sharing their experiences.
Thank you, Councillor Morse.
More.
I can see Councillor Ledbetter, but I think there's somebody else.
I was just going to say, with Conservative group supporters.
Thank you. Is there anybody else before I ask Councillor Jemima Moore?
to really explain how the damaging conversion work is, and I wanted to express my support and set to members of the LGBT community and on the hope them to feel fully accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Would you like to sum up, Councillor Kevin?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and also thank you to all comments and the support tonight, which, as Councillor Hannaford stated, I very much hope that members of the community have heard, so that they are aware of the support of this council. Just on a lighter note, Councillor Hannaford was the first openly gay Lord Mayor of this city, but I was the first openly gay Deputy Lord Mayor of the city. And I was also the first person to have my husband as my consort whilst I was Deputy Lord Mayor. So I think we might be even on that. But I very much agree with everything that Councillor Hannaford very eloquently pointed out and said. Councillor Hussain, I would like to thank you for your comments as well, and in particular pointing out about consultation, because I do think it is vitally important that everyone is aware of it and that you respond. And also, Councillor Morse, yes, I agree with you, but in my view there should be no exceptions. Thank you also to both Councillor Morse for their comments on this matter too, and I would welcome it if we did submit this as part of the consultation. So thank you again for everyone's support tonight, and I suggest we move to the vote.
Okay, we'll move to the vote. All in favour? Looks pretty unanimous. Unanimously passed. In the interest of being neutral, I didn't take part in the debate. As a point of information, I would just like to point out to you that I know Councillor Hannaford mentioned one programme, but there is on Netflix a programme called For the Bible Tells Me So, which addresses the historical homophobia of some parts of the church, and it's a very moving programme. I would recommend it to you all to understand how the church got so much wrong and to just enlighten yourselves, really. I think that's enough on that. That brings us to agenda item 17. And do we have any questions from members? Great. Only please, because it's December and we all have homes, hopefully, to get back to. So thank you, members. That now brings us to the end of the evening's meeting of council. However, before you rush off, the leader would like to update members on a matter of interest.
Yes, part two.
Yes.
We need to make the closing.
The meeting is now closed.